Hey guys, this is going to be a video all about which farming item to buy, specifically referring to Midas, Maelstrom, and Battle Fury, and really understanding how pro players make that choice.
Banana slam jam.
Hey guys, this video is brought to you guys by Dota Plus, an app that gives you the edge when you're looking to gain MMR. It has all types of neat features once you load into the draft. So as you can see from one of my games, it shows you the player and hero stats. It shows you the player lane and role info, and it has a link to their profile on Dota Buff in case you want to know more. It tells you who is queued together, and it also gives you ban suggestions right at the start of the draft. This game, it told me to ban Puck, one of the best heroes for an enemy player, and I tried to ban it, didn't get banned, and proceeded to lose to Puck. So it definitely works out. And if you're not sure about how your matchups work, it also has a matchup calculator as the draft goes on. If all of this sounds interesting to you, make sure you click the link below in the description to download the app. So something that kind of came to my attention learning from Quakefo was understanding how much of the map I plan to farm. And I want you guys, no matter what MMR you are, if you're looking to really understand farming, to start thinking about how much area of the map you are currently farming. What I mean by this is how many camps per minute are you clearing? How many waves per minute are you clearing? This has a lot to do with overall what hero you're playing, but also what matchups you're in. So it's not as much about prediction for the new players at this point. It's more about awareness of how many creeps and how much area of the map your hero has access to. So getting into, with that precursor, let's get into an explanation for each of the three farming items. So what Midas does is, other than the 40 attack speed, it barely really accelerates your farming speed. So what it does is it takes less amount of total creeps that you're getting and turns it into a net more gold. Obviously, you're getting one creep that's giving you extra gold and experience per minute. So Midas is especially good when you're either having a bad game or you're maybe having early matchups that aren't that great for you, and there's really no item that's going to allow you to farm more parts of the map. So Midas turns less creeps into more gold, meaning less area of the map that we are farming. Now, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum is Battle Fury. Now, what Battle Fury does is it turns your hero into a flash farming creep gutting machine, right? So what that means is that per minute you have a lot more creeps that you can clear. So a common problem you may run into if you have a Midas is that you want to farm more parts of the map. The lanes are constantly pushed in, for instance, but you're not able to actually clear these creeps fast enough. But on the other hand, if we're dealing with Battle Fury, perhaps your team is either losing or you have heavy farming mid laners and off laners, and you don't have enough space to use your Battle Fury. So an example of a game where you build Battle Fury that will look bad is where you farm the triangle, for instance, you farm bottom lane, and then there's 30 seconds left on the minute, say it's 18:30, and there's just nowhere left for you to farm, right? So a common issue with Midas is you can't get all the creep waves that you need to get. On Battle Fury, it's that you run out of creeps to farm and you have a lot of dead time. So this is stuff that's hard to predict, but as long as you're aware that this is really what you're looking for, you'll be able to more accurately learn from which farming item that you purchased. I also want to point out that Maelstrom is pretty much just an in-between. Also, for ranged heroes, it is pretty much the Battle Fury equivalent, but it's the in-between. Say you need to clear a few more creep waves and creep camps, but you also need to fight a little bit early. Maelstrom offers a lot more in early game fights for most heroes than a Battle Fury. So it really comes down to this spectrum of not very much area to farm as a carry for Midas, all the way up to Battle Fury with Maelstrom resting in between. I would like to note that pretty much every carry you want to think about the fact that farm exponentially increases. The more items you get, the more levels you have, the faster you will continue to farm. So most farming heroes, even in the mid to off lane, will go some item that accelerates them first. And that's the key of this video, is understanding what, before you get that acceleration item, once you have it, exactly how much of the area will you be able to consume on the map with that acceleration item. So for today's video, I have 2 examples. I wanted to use the same hero if possible, and basically just give you guys a brief insight on what the pro player sees, such that you understand maybe what to think about when buying these items more than just theory crafting, you know, what I've just told you. So in the first replay, we have Uragi playing Ursa. And as you see here, he's queued up a Midas. He's got some bad map matchups. If you don't know, Ursa's not that great against Veno because of the continuous slows and kiting. He's not that great against Tiny early game because Tiny can threaten to burst him full to 0 and also has pretty high armor for free at level 6. And the same thing for Terrorblade goes, where he's a high armor illusion hero. Ursa is a single target physical damage hero. None of these farming matchups are very good for Ursa. So when it comes to thinking about how much area of the map you are going to have access to, it's important to think, since you're farming, the other team is also farming, what heroes on the map that if they were to walk up to a creep wave, would you be able to farm against? And an example would be at 10 minutes in, unless the Ursa's trying to kill the Veno, if they both walk at the creep wave, the Veno's just going to hit you with some autos and apply that poison sting and maybe gale you, and at the very least going to boot you out of lane. If he gets a gank partner with a stun, he might just kill you. So what that means for Uragi's hero is that he's not going to have access to any lane that Terrorblade, Tiny, or Veno are farming, which most likely means very little lanes at all. And so his option is to all-in kill items, such as like phase boots defusal, or to go for a farming route. And so when it comes to kill items, I tend to think of these aggressive items as an option when you are winning your lane. Like if you have a really good lane matchup, but you have bad farming matchups, those are the types of games where you're going to go Diffusal, Echo Saber, Orb of Corrosion, Armlet, you know, these type of items where you're looking to fight with that early lead because the opponent farms well against you. But for the sake of this video, we're talking about farming items. So if we envision his map matchups, right, we see that he just doesn't have much place he can go. So now that he has the Midas, what exactly is he going to do with it, right? He's going to farm ultra passively, a hero that doesn't actually mind the Midas when he only has 1 point in overpower, and he's pretty much going to defensively clear waves. But notice how even when he's trying to farm against a level 6 TB, he can't farm the wave. So he's pretty much put himself on, I'm going to defend my towers duty, but play hyper passive and relegate myself to the triangle. So the fact that he had a Warlock in lane allowed him to rush this Midas with no other items, but sometimes you may need to go some smaller items before you finish the Midas. But just pay attention to the fact that he's now like, oh, I want to farm Ancients, but I don't feel like I can. So instead of going the phase boots first, he gets the Morbid just to be able to farm this part of the map. But really, look, he's not clearing that many creeps per minute. He's making sure he's stacking. When you have limited area on the map, stacking is even more important. And if you look at his heat map, for the last, 2 to 3 minutes, it's a very small portion of the map, and he's going to make sure he clears the defensive farm as fast as possible. And the biggest thing about this is if he doesn't go the Midas, he could absolutely get the same items that he's going for, but he's basically saying, since he has so little access to the map, that if I go Midas into Diffusal BKB, I'll get the Diffusal BKB at about the same time I would. Maybe the Diffusal will be a bit slower, but the 2-item combo will be much faster. So notice how he's still putting himself in front of towers because he's a tanky, survivable dude. But if you're not that way, like say you're more of a fragile carry, this isn't how you would play. You would mainly stick to the triangle. But what we're seeing currently in the meta is a lot more of these beefy carries with natural survivability. But since the offlaners are so toxic right now, we're dealing with a lot of Razors, Vipers, in this case, Venomancers. The lane isn't going necessarily the way we want. And I believe there's a combination of carries being relatively naturally survivable right now, but also having offlaners be really annoying lane dominators rather than these blink stunners. Midas is being seen a lot more at the highest level. If you can remember one sentence from this entire thing, bad lane, naturally survivable, and good matchups later on, okay? But notice how he's going for normal items after he goes for the Midas, right? He's not doing some fancy build. The Midas is simply allowing him to farm a smaller portion of the map and basically be okay with it, right? Because he doesn't think his hero is capable of fighting back for portions of the map against the likes of TSM. Everything that he's done, right, has been defensive, except for this first move that his team's initiating. A little bit weird that it's right before his defusal, but everything that's happened to him up until that point, 7 minutes after he got the Midas, was purely TSM forcing engagements onto him. So you're really seeing that he's like, I'm not very strong in the game. I'm only going to fight if I'm forced to, after he bought the Midas. And that's kind of the mantra that he has. So the next replay we have is actually an Ame Ursa. And while he's also against the Tiny, I want you to realize that he's against 4 melee heroes. Very little kiting potential on Liquid. This is a solid Ursa game. He's also having a Razor with a good game, and a high-pressure mid laner tanky like Necro. So in the other game, they had a gank-heavy lineup with the Puck, while in this game, they kind of have space-making beefy boys for the Ursa. So what that means is that he's predicting that he's going to have a lot more space to farm. He was also against a Magnuson lane, which is a much better matchup being a melee hero against Ursa than that of Venno versus Ursa. So he's able to kind of build up these small items in lane, slowly but surely increasing his farm. But so let's see what happens exactly when he gets this Battle Fury. So the thing about Battle Fury, it's going to be a bit deceiving in this replay, the example I used, because he has Aegis and he's an Ursa and they're up by 3k. But the thing about Battle Fury is you're predicting you're either strong enough to control the area that you are farming, or that you're a hero like Anti-Mage that's survivable enough to farm a lot of the map such that the opponent can't gank you. I want to remind you guys that if you're a beefy hero like Ursa, lacking a bit of mobility early on, Battle Fury means that you think you can hold your ground. If the opponent tries to take towers, if they try to invade your triangle, you think that you can fight them, right? While on the other hand, if you're a hero like Anti-Mage that's much more mobile on the map, you're still going to be aiming to clear a bunch of camps just like Ursa does, but Anti-Mage makes it so that if you clear camps faster, you're spending less time in one place, and going from camp to camp faster means it's harder to gank you. So it kind of means that you think you're going to be able to kite the opponent around the map because you're clearing creeps faster. Now, in Anti-Mage's case, he pretty much buys Battle Fury every game, so with that in mind, understanding this concept where you pick Anti-Mage and then have no space to farm, because Battle Fury is an item that naturally requires you to have a lot of area of the map to be able to farm, that's going to teach you maybe what games you're not supposed to pick heroes that rely heavily on Battle Fury, such as Anti-Mage. But in this game, we're going to see that Ame's the one clearing creep waves very fast, clearing creep camps very fast, and then he's TPing from like across the map to defend towers rather than defensively from his triangle, and he's actually going to fight for what's his. He's totally willing to run in here, right? So the idea of this is that he's the one instigating. They're map controlling. He has space on the map that he wants to dictate, and that's really what we're going to see the difference between this Battle Fury and this Midas, is that the Battle Fury, because he's clearing camps and waves so quickly, he has extra time to do other things, whether that's go clear more creep waves and creep camps, or whether or not it's to join fights, in this case where you have an Aegis super early on a mid-game fighting carry like Ursa. So I don't want you guys to necessarily think that Battle Fury means I always go farm, and that's what it's always meant for. What it's meant for is when you control a lot of the map, whether that's because you're strong enough to fight, or whether because you're strong enough to farm that entire area. This is the core concept that I've started to learn from these pro players, is it's not as easy as like, hey, I want to farm by Battle Fury. It's all about envisioning how much area you have to control. Have I mentioned that more than less than 9 times in this video? But if you see the heat map for Ame, you know, he's moved pretty much all the way around the map, right, with this Battle Fury. And that's because, you know, that A just really helps him because he's not afraid of death at all. And because he's not afraid of death and they're winning, he's actually trying to increase his reach on the map rather than being tanky. So, like, after you go that Battle Fury, you know, you have that option to either continue to accelerate your farm with items like Yasha, Sange, and Yasha, and Blink Dagger, or you can look to fight right after in the case of a hero like Alchemist who goes Radiance into BKB. Now, I'd like to give a brief tidbit about Radiance. Right now, Radiance is not very popular. And the difference between Radiance and Battle Fury largely is not the final item. A lot of people think, like, do I want the burn damage or do I want the cleave? Both of these items are generally farm items. The issue with Radiance is that along the way, you don't get anything of use. Nobody wants the Evasion Talisman. That doesn't help you accelerate farm. And Sacred Relic is so much gold, 3,750. On the other hand, Battle Fury, you get the Ring of Health and Lane, which is really nice. Just the little damage components from the Broadsword and the Claymore. And even the Void Stone for some mana regen's pretty useful on most carries. So the reason why most carries right now are not going Radiance is you just don't have the time. Even though he bought Battle Fury on Ame, he's fighting, right? He's controlling areas on the map. The only exception to the Radiance is Alch. It's because our Alchemist can get a Radiance at like 13 minutes into the game. Unlike pretty much every other hero in the game, he has built-in sustain from his ultimate, and then Soul Ring allows him to have the mana to actually farm properly. But other than Alchemist, Radiance is kind of out of the equation. But the Radiance, once you get it, it really is the same idea as Battle Fury, right? It lets you clear a lot of creeps faster. And it's also nicer for fighting on its own, right? Radiance Burn is generally better because carries tend to get kited in the early to mid game. Little bit of a, you know, pause for the Radiance, right? But just notice how once he clears camps, he's going to have more times to do things. The percentage of time that Ame is actually hitting creeps because he has a Battle Fury is much lower because it takes him, you know, 2 to 3 seconds to actually clear these camps. While on the other hand, with the Uragi, he was spending pretty much every minute hitting a creep, or every second hitting a creep, but, you know, he has a Midas, so he's at least getting some more gold out of it. I would like to note that Uragi does come back and win his other game, even though it was a very hard game. Shard making Ursa very strong here, but you can really just see how much of the map he's running around. Clearing camps, leading the charge, kind of like basically saying, come at me, Liquid. As we control this triangle, you guys can't fight us. My hero with Shard and Blink alone is able to fight you, right? If this is something you can't do in this current meta with a Battle Fury, you shouldn't be buying Battle Fury, right? And that's why I think Ursa is one of the few heroes that can still get away with Battle Fury in the right games, because even though it's a farming item, he's still controlling a lot of the map. So in pubs, this may not be as reliable, right? Because PSG LGD, they're playing on timings. They're playing as a team. They have Roche takers with Chen creeps tanking the Roche and all that kind of stuff. But what I really want to emphasize to you guys, well, I already said if there's one sentence to take away, if there's one core concept to take away, how many creep camps per minute, how many creep waves per minute, how much of the farm on the map do I have access to? If you elected to maybe skip the Battle Fury for a Midas or a Maelstrom, and you see that there were 2 or 3 jungle camps that you were safe to farm, that you simply weren't fast enough clearing creeps to get to them in time every minute, then maybe Battle Fury might have been the right answer because you weren't being forced to farm. On the other hand, if you run out of creep camps per minute and then you end up wanting to fight and you had a Battle Fury instead of a Maelstrom, that may backfire. And obviously it goes down the spectrum when it goes to Midas. I hope this video helps you guys. This is how I've started envisioning my farming items, pretty much just always asking myself how much area of the map I think I'm going to have. And also comes down to how much time I think I'm going to have, because Maelstrom and Battle Fury both being similar concepts. Maelstrom's cheaper, so we get to our next item faster. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.